Single dad wore a borrowed suit to his interview, the CEO said. "I've waited years. Did you sleep in that?" Priscilla Dane asked, and the whole panel laughed. Marcus Bell sat very straight in the borrowed suit. It was a half size too big in the shoulders, and the cuffs swallowed his wrists, and he'd known it the second he put it on that morning. But it was the only suit he had access to, and he'd pressed it himself at 5 a.m. "It's borrowed," he said simply, "from my brother-in-law. I appreciate you noticing." Priscilla, VP of Operations, panel chair, the kind of person who wore her own importance like perfume, exchanged a look with the young man beside her. "Brad, make a note," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. Candidates showed up to a final round interview in a hand-me-down. She turned back to Marcus with a smile that had no warmth in it at all. "Look, I'm going to save us all some time. We're a premium brand. We sell trust. And trust starts with the person across the table looking like he belongs there. You don't. So tell me, why are you wasting our morning?" 3 other panelists looked at the table. One of them, a coordinator named Tessa Lowe, opened her mouth and then closed it. What Priscilla Dane didn't know was that in 19 minutes, the founder of the company, a man who never explained himself to anyone, would open that conference room door, see the man in the borrowed suit, and stop breathing. What Brad didn't know was that the hand-me-down he'd just been told to write down would be the last note he ever took at that company. And what none of them knew was that the tired man they decided was nobody had, on a freezing night 7 years ago, climbed over a railing to sit beside a stranger who'd given up, and that the stranger had been searching for him ever since. That morning had started, like all of Marcus's mornings, in the dark. The alarm went at 4:50, so the suit would have time to hang in the bathroom while the shower ran, steam doing the work an iron couldn't. Marcus stood in the small kitchen, pressing the lapels flat with his palm, listening to the building wake up around him. Pipes knocking, a neighbor's TV, the early bus hissing at the corner. The suit belonged to Danny, his late wife's brother. "Take it, man," Danny had said, pushing it into his hands. "Nina would want you to land this. It was the wrong cut and the wrong decade, but it was clean, and it was free. And Marcus had stopped being too proud for free a long time ago. 2 years now since Nina. 2 years since the long illness that ate their savings. Then, their credit. Then the job he'd had to leave to care for her in the last months. He didn't talk about that part on applications. Employment gap, the forms called it. He called it the hardest and most right thing he'd ever done. Ivy wandered out at 6, dragging the blanket, hair like a dandelion. "You look fancy," she said, deeply impressed. "I look fancy," he agreed, crouching to her level. "Big day. If it goes good, we get to stop counting." "Counting what?" "Everything, bug, just for a while." He made her toast cut into triangles, the only way she'd accept it, and walked her to the neighbor's where she'd stay until the bus. On the way back to the train, he passed a man on the corner, trying to gather papers the wind had scattered across the wet pavement, and without thinking about it, Marcus set down his folder and helped him chase them down, handing back a stack of insurance forms gone soft with rain. "God bless you," the man said. Marcus just nodded and kept walking. To him, it wasn't a thing you decided to do. It was just what you did when someone needed it. He had no idea that the same reflex, years ago, had already changed 2 lives, his own among them, and that today it was about to do it again. By the time the train carried him toward the glass tower with North Wind etched over the doors, the borrowed suit had stopped feeling like a costume and started feeling like armor. He stood the whole ride, holding the rail, watching the city slide by gray and waking. He'd done the math the night before, the way he did every night, rent in 9 days. The clinic letter he kept face down on the counter so Ivy wouldn't ask. The $11 that had to last until this job said yes or no. He wasn't asking the world for a rescue. He was asking for a chance to do the work he already knew how to do, because he was good at this job: operations, logistics, the unglamorous machinery of keeping promises on time, and he'd been good at it for a decade before his life came apart. He'd run a regional distribution floor with 40 people under him once. He could read a broken supply chain the way some people read sheet music. He just needed one room full of people to look past the cuffs. This was not going to be that room. The Northwind lobby was bright and severe, and the receptionist who checked him in had a kind face and a quiet word. "Mr. Bell? You're the 9:30. Final round." She lowered her voice like she was letting him in on something. "Heads up, mister. Vale sometimes drops in on the last interview himself. The founder. He's done it every week for as long as anyone's worked here. Nobody knows what he's looking for." She slid him a visitor badge and a cup of water. "Good luck. You seem nice. We don't get a lot of nice." Marcus thanked her, sat, and waited with his folders squared on his knees, and a small thread of hope pulled tight in his chest at the word founder. Maybe a man who built something from nothing would understand a man trying to build himself back. Then the conference room door opened, and it wasn't the founder. It was Priscilla Dane. She'd read his arsum before he sat down, and he could tell from her face she'd already decided. The borrowed suit only confirmed it. "Marcus Bell," she said, drawing his name out like it bored her. "Operations coordinator. 10 years of experience, then a 2-year hole, then nothing." She set the page down. "Walk me through the hole." "My wife was sick," Marcus said. "I cared for her until she passed. That's the hole." Priscilla didn't soften. If anything, she sharpened, the way some people do when handed a chance to be gentle and decide not to take it. "Here's my concern. We move fast. We don't have room to carry someone who's been out of the game in a borrowed suit with—" She waved a hand at the air around him, a lot going on at home. "We need someone hungry, not someone who needs us more than we need him." Beside her, Brad smirked. "It's a vibe thing," he offered. Tessa Lowe, the coordinator at the end of the table, said quietly, "I think his logistics background is actually really stro." "I'm running this," Priscilla said, not even looking at her, and Tessa went silent. The thing about a phone in your pocket on a morning like this is that it carries the weight of your whole life. Marcus felt his buzz, the neighbor, probably, or the automated voice from the clinic about the balance he couldn't pay. He didn't reach for it. He kept his hands folded and his back straight, and he answered every question Priscilla threw, calmly, completely, because Ivy was at home counting on a man who didn't crumble. He had no way of knowing the woman determined to break him down was being measured too, by a standard she didn't know existed, and that she was failing it, line by line. She could have left it as a quick no. People secure in themselves usually do. Priscilla kept going, because the room had become a small stage and she liked a stage. "Let's test something," she said, sliding a printed sheet across the table. "Since you claim 10 years of operations. This is a live one. A distribution lane that's been bleeding us for 2 quarters. Our last 3 coordinators couldn't fix it. Dazzle me. Or admit you're rusty." It was a trap dressed as a question. She expected him to freeze, and Brad already had his pen up to record the freeze. Marcus picked up the sheet. He read it the way he read everything, all the way through, while the room waited for him to fail. "Your problem isn't the lane," he said after a moment. "It's that you're routing 2 product classes through one crossdock and treating them like they move at the same speed. They don't. Split the slow class to the secondary hub, stage it overnight, and you'll claw back most of the bleed inside a month. You don't need a new coordinator. You need to stop fighting your own timing. He set the page down. That's free. For a second, nobody said anything. Tessa Lowe's eyebrows had gone up. Even Brad's pen had stopped. The answer was clean, and it was right, and everyone at the table knew it. Priscilla's jaw tightened, because the one thing she hadn't planned for was him being good. She recovered the only way a person like her can, by changing the rules. Cute theory, she said, pushing the sheet aside. But theory in a borrowed suit doesn't move freight. She leaned back. Let's do the classic instead. Tell us about a time you went above and beyond for someone. Really sell me. Make me believe a guy in a thrift store suit has something special. Brad actually laughed. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He had a few clean professional answers ready. A shipping crisis he'd solved overnight. A client he'd saved. But the cruelty in the room had stripped something away, and what came out instead was smaller and truer than he meant to give them. A long time ago, he said slowly, before all this, I was driving home from a night shift. Bad weather. And I saw somebody on a bridge who'd run out of reasons to keep going. He turned the water cup in his hands. I'm not a hero. I just didn't think I could keep driving and live with myself. So I stopped. And I stayed. That's the whole story. Sometimes going above and beyond just means you don't drive past. For a second, the room was quiet in a real way. Then Priscilla rolled her eyes. So you've got no professional example. Got it. She made a show of clicking her pen. I think we have what we need. Honestly, Mr. Bell, I'd encourage you to be realistic about the level of company you're applying to. This isn't a charity. It landed exactly where she aimed it. Marcus felt his face go warm. He thought for one cold second about Ivy and the toast triangles and the word counting and about how far he'd ridden the train for this. Then he made a decision that had nothing to do with them and everything to do with the man he intended his daughter to think he was. He stood. He buttoned the borrowed jacket over the too long cuffs. Thank you for your time, he said, with a dignity the room did not deserve. I hope you find someone hungry enough. He picked up his folder and turned for the door, and he did not let his shoulders fall. And he did not look back. And he reached out for the handle, and the door opened from the other side before he touched it. The man who stepped through was somewhere past 40, in a suit that fit the way only quiet money fits, and the whole panel came to its feet so fast a chair scraped. Mr. Vale, Priscilla said, brightening into a different person entirely. We're just finishing up. This candidate was actually on his way. Adrian Vale wasn't listening to her. He had stopped 2 steps into the room, and he was looking at Marcus, and the color had drained out of his face, the way it drains out of a man who has seen something he stopped letting himself believe in. It's you, Adrian said. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry. 7 years ago. Adrian's voice came out rough, like it was being dragged over something. February. The Caro Street overpass. Freezing rain. There was a man on the wrong side of the railing who decided he was done. He took a step closer. And a stranger pulled over and climbed over the rail and sat down next to him on the ledge. For 4 hours. Gave him his coat. A canvas work coat, too big in the shoulders. His eyes flicked, just once, to the borrowed suit, and something broke open in his face. Told him the morning was worth seeing. Said, give it one more morning. You can always decide tomorrow. The conference room had gone absolutely silent. Priscilla's bright smile froze and then slid off entirely. Brad's pen stopped. Tessa Lowe had a hand pressed to her mouth. Marcus's folder slipped from his fingers and landed soft on the carpet. He stared at the polished, powerful man in front of him and slowly found the gaunt, soaked, hollowed-out face he'd sat beside in the dark a lifetime ago. "You called yourself a dead man," he said quietly. "And I told you that you weren't. Not yet." "You wrote your number inside the coat collar," Adrian said, and now his voice was shaking openly, in front of everyone, in front of his entire executive panel. "I called it 3 weeks later, when I finally believed I might stay. It was disconnected. I never got your name past Marcus." He let out a breath that was half a laugh and half something else. "Do you have any idea what I've done with the last 7 years? I built this. All of it. And every single week I sit in on the last interview, looking at every face. Because I told myself if I built something big enough, someday the man who saved my life would walk through one of my doors." His composure finally gave way. "I've waited years to say thank you. And you walked in here. And they..." He stopped. He turned, for the first time, and looked at his own panel. "They put you in front of a firing squad," Adrian said softly, "while you sat there in a borrowed suit and told them the realest thing anyone's ever said in this building. And they laughed." Nobody at the table breathed. But the reckoning was only beginning. Because Adrian Vale was not only the man Marcus had once saved, he was the man who signed every name on the wall of this company, and by the end of the week 3 of those names would be coming down. For a long moment, Adrian just looked at the people who worked for him. "Priscilla," he said finally. Quiet, almost gentle, which was worse. "I review the interview recordings. All of them. It's in everyone's onboarding paperwork, though I doubt you've read yours in years." Her face went the color of the carpet. "I've watched you do a version of this to 19 candidates in the last 18 months. People with gaps. People who were sick or grieving or rebuilding. People who showed up in the only clothes they had and got told they didn't look like they belonged." He shook his head slowly. "I kept thinking the pattern was somebody else's. It wasn't. It was yours. We're done." She started 3 different sentences and finished none of them. There was nothing to finish. He turned to Brad, who had spent the morning laughing on cue. "You don't lead anything yet, so you learn instead of leaving. You're going to spend the next month working intake at the community jobs program we fund downtown. Real people, real stories. No audience. We'll see who you are after that." Brad nodded fast, pale and silent. Then Adrian's eyes found Tessa Lowe, the one who'd tried, twice, to say something true and been talked over both times. You spoke up when it cost you something, and stopped only because she outranked you. That's the instinct I can't teach. Come see me this afternoon. I think you've been in the wrong chair." Tessa's eyes filled, and she nodded. Adrian bent, picked up Marcus's fallen folder, and handed it back to him with both hands, the way you return something that matters. "I'm not going to insult you by offering you a job out of guilt," he said low. "Just between them now. I read your file before I walked in. I read every finalist's. 10 years running operations, clean record, and a reference who called you the most reliable man he ever employed. You were the strongest candidate in this building before I knew your face. The bridge just means I get to stop searching." He swallowed. "Come run operations for me. Not the coordinator role, the whole function. Because you've already proven the only thing I actually care about, that you don't drive past." Marcus stood there in the too big suit, and for the first time in 2 years the tight thread in his chest let go all at once. "I'd have to bring my daughter to a few things," he said, because honesty was the only currency he'd ever trusted. "I'm all she's got." Adrian smiled, and his eyes were wet. "Bring her any time. I owe her father a great deal. The names came off the wall by Friday, quietly, the way things end when the person ending them takes no pleasure in it. Priscilla Dane's badge stopped working. The company's hiring practices went under formal review, and 3 of the candidates she'd humiliated got letters inviting them to reapply, this time to a panel that knew better. She tried, once, to reach Marcus to explain herself. He let the call go. Some apologies are really just a person trying to feel lighter, and he wasn't in the business of carrying other people's stones. He felt no triumph in any of it. When Adrian told him about the review, Marcus only nodded once and said, "I hope she learned something." He meant it. That was the difference between them and him, and it always had been. 6 weeks later, the mornings looked different. Marcus still woke before the alarm out of habit, but the suit hanging in his closet now was his own, tailored, fitting him exactly, and beside it, on a hook by the door, hung an old canvas work coat, too big in the shoulders, that Adrian had pressed into his hands his first day. "I kept it 7 years," he'd said. "It's yours again. I had the better deal." Marcus had framed nothing. He just hung the coat where he'd see it every morning on his way out, a reminder of the night he'd almost driven past, and the man he'd be ashamed to have become if he had. Ivy had new shoes that lit up when she ran, and a wall in their bigger apartment covered in drawings, and a habit of announcing to anyone who'd listen that her dad was the boss of getting things places on time. The clinic balance was paid. They had stopped counting. On a Saturday, the 2 of them met Adrian and Tessa, now running people and culture, and very good at it, at a diner that did pancakes the size of plates. The grown-ups talked logistics, and the kids next to them stole each other's whipped cream, and at some point Adrian leaned across the table, quiet so only Marcus could hear over Ivy's laughing. "I never told you what you actually said that night," he said, at the very end, before you climbed back over. "You said, the worst day you ever had isn't the last day you'll ever get." He turned his coffee cup. "I've built a whole life on that sentence. I just never knew the man's name." Marcus looked at his daughter, sticky-faced and shrieking with joy, and at the framed nothing of a morning that had turned out to be worth seeing after all. "Marcus," he said, and put out his hand across the table like they were meeting for the first time. "Glad you stayed." Adrian shook it, and didn't let go right away, and outside the late light came gold through the glass. 2 men who'd met once in the dark, finally meeting in the morning. It had taken 7 years and a borrowed suit. It had been worth the wait.